Hello guys, this is Modest Major here, bringing you some commentary over some Master Chief Collection gameplay. If you guys didn't know, this whole weekend I have been at Eurogamer Expo. That's why I wasn't active on Twitter, why I wasn't active on Twitch, although to be fair, I haven't been very active in general, and of course I want to apologize for that. But I don't want to go into too detail because I've got a pretty interesting topic to talk about. And that was, of course, going to Eurogamer and getting to try out Halo 5 for the first time. Before I go into that, if you don't know what Eurogamer is, it's essentially the United Kingdom's version of E3, obviously on a much smaller schedule, which in fact means that the queues and the wait times probably aren't as long as some other expos, but it also means that they have less setups, less financing, so it might even out in the end. Either way, we did have to wait around 2 to 3 hours each time for a go on Halo 5. It ended up being the game of the show for me by a mile, and I wasn't 100% convinced that was going to be the case. Obviously, I had already played the Halo 5 beta, so I didn't know how fresh this was going to feel. I didn't know if it was just going to be a continuation of my experience in the beta and maybe, you know, get me a bit excited, get me on tender hooks, but it might be something I'm already familiar with. You obviously had Star Wars Battlefront 3 at this convention, which was super darn exciting to get my hands on for the first time and to try it, and it was something completely fresh. However, that game wasn't really up to my tastes. But I'll probably do a commentary talking about that a little bit later on, going in detail, because I'm sure some of you guys are interested to hear about that. However, Halo 5, the booth, they happened to have Warzone. It was 12 versus 12, which was pretty darn cool for me because last year when we went to EGX, we played the MCC and we got 4-person FFAs on Lockout. Now, Lockout isn't one of my favorite maps. 4-person FFAs definitely isn't one of my favorite game types. And they had a third of the setups that they had at this year's EGX for Halo 5. So they had 8 setups overall. This time they had 24. So the queue times therefore went a whole lot smoother and a whole lot faster. Plus you had the damages last year for Master Chief Collection where you could tell it was a little bit buggy. Some people were having their game crash. And you had to effectively miss out on turns because they didn't want to slow down the queue too much, which was kind of absurd when you really think about it. But this year, there were pretty much no technical hitches whatsoever I can speak of. And I'll just go into the game mechanics for a little bit and tell you guys what I thought of the game type, whether I think it will be viable in terms of longevity, in terms of enjoyment, does it stack up to big team battle. Now going into it, I suppose my impressions and my instincts were that this was going to be super fun, but pretty much on a predominantly casual level, and it might not have the longevity that I would expect out of a game type, or that I would be personally looking for. You know, if you guys know the way in which I play Halo, Halo 4 especially, I was very big into my Team Slayer, I was very big into my Ricochet, because for me, just with the gameplay mechanics in of itself, there's a whole lot of depth that just seems to last a really, really long time in the ways that you maneuver around the spawns, the way that you try the different power weapons out. Just the base gameplay of Halo gives me room to be creative, and when there's over-complications, that's not something I've never really particularly gotten behind. I was never the biggest big team battle fan. I personally thought it peaked with Halo 3 because it was very sandboxy and you could be pretty creative with the maps themselves. But Halo 4 definitely didn't capture my attention. My hatred of the Mantis and some of the other more overpowered elements of the sandbox really put a damper on the experience. You know, I remember times like Ragnarok when you'd be walking up to top middle and there'd be some guy with a sniper head glitching behind the Pelican, being a troll, and it just, I don't know, it just didn't seem to flow well. Now Warzone, on the other hand, for me, it pretty much seemed to match my taste of exactly what I wanted out of Halo 5. When I played Halo 5, the actual matchmaking beta portion of the game, obviously you only had the 2 or 3 ranked modes. I think they had the objective type towards the end. But they were all ranked, and for the most part, they seem to be pretty darn try-hard, is what I would call. Now, I don't mind. I think everyone loves a good try-hard, especially if they pull off a clutch win now and again. But personally, it's not what I like to spend the majority of my time with. To be fair, I do always play with a try-hard mindset, but sometimes when you play the ranked experience, things just get a little bit heated. You start playing teams that can really do you in if you fall asleep for even a second, if you fall asleep at the wheel for even a second and lose concentration. And it means that you have to be constantly on your A game, so you have to be constantly in go mode. And on a day when you've drunk 2 Red Bulls, you've come off work and you're feeling intense, you've been waiting for this Halo session all day, those days are great. But the days when you come home from work and you just want to put down your bags and you just want to say, no, enough is enough, I just want to chill, I don't want to have to get destroyed, I don't want to have to worry about playing every single second of the game with Dragon Ball Z mode, Goku, Super Saiyan, I just want to chill and basically stomp some people. And Warzone is literally that type of game in a nutshell. But however, that doesn't mean that it's some casual BS fest. It has got some sense of structure to it. They basically took the ordnance system that we found in Halo 4 and thought, how can we find a way to balance this? And rec cards was their solution. You don't just get weapons for free, you don't just run around the map and go, oh, an incineration cannon fell from the sky. You've got to save up your rec points as you go through the match, and there are various ways in doing this. Obviously, you can beat up on the AI. For me, that didn't seem to be the most effective option unless you could coordinate with your team. We weren't playing with headsets or microphones, so we couldn't necessarily do that. And most of the bosses took 3 or 4 people to take down the boss. And plus, we found that if we killed these bosses, it actually extended the point total by about 100 to 200, depending on how powerful the boss was. As I was going through my route, it reminded me a bit of Titanfall, where you kind of had your pre-planned route at the beginning of the game, and you kind of coordinated through it whilst killing AI to stack up points towards your Titan. You started moving towards the enemy spawn, and then started beating up on them, and that's essentially how Warzone kind of flows. You go on this war path with your team, you try and be as effective as possible in your path. For me, what I would do was save up money for a loadout weapon, which was the battle rifle. The battle rifle only cost 2 requisition points out of 9. The 9 being the total that is the highest that you can reach at any given time. So I would get the battle rifle, and what it effectively meant was that you could have the battle rifle for the entirety of the game. So you had all these guys running around with assault rifles and pistols, and if you figured out that you pressed left bumper to get onto the loadout tab, which was a separate tab from the default tab, there was this cheeky little battle rifle sitting there, and I was like, oh! And when me, Ruben, and Ubernik found out, who were the 3 people that went to this event, we actually just started basically destroying the enemy team, because not everyone was familiar with the way in which Warzone functioned, and you kept getting a battle rifle. The pistol is good, but you have to hit every single one of your shots. The weapon itself has low auto aim, and the battle rifle will pull off the shots before the pistol, so it's pretty much a severe handicap using the pistol unless you're going Super Saiyan. The assault rifle itself, pretty decent up close, but I'd say the pistol and the battle rifle will outshoot them as long as every single one of your shots is hitting, which is easier said than done sometimes, especially with the pistol. And then we would move on. There were basically 3 domination points. If you played Domination or Dominion from Halo 4, you know that there's 3 spawn caps, and you have to collect them all to increase your score. But the spawns are also very dependent on the Warzone points which are captured. So you get your first Warzone point for free, because it's like right outside your base. You got to go in there, kill the AI, take your first base, and the enemy team should be doing that. And then as fast as you can, work through that base and then get to the central base. And what we found is if we rushed hard enough, if we got the right power weapons, and if we got the right setup, we would have the 2 bases, and then they would start getting spawn camped on the 3rd. Now, you'd think it would end there, pretty much, oh, they're going to spawn there, so that's pretty much end of deal. Maybe you should only hold those 2 bases. Because in Call of Duty, if you held 2 bases in Domination, the enemy team would spawn on the 3rd one. And that's what I was kind of thinking. I was thinking, oh, maybe we don't want to hold 3. But in fact, when you hold 3, they go back to the initial spawn right at the beginning of their base, the beginning of their spawn, and they get stuck in a base with only 2 exit points. And they get utterly demolished. They get mollywopped on, because they have to go out of these really, really obvious doorways. There's no shortcuts, there's no hidden routes. They have to walk out one of these two doors. Now, bearing in mind at this point that Warzone is very, very momentum heavy. So you're stacking up rec points, your entire team is collecting the points, you own all of the map, and you've got them stuck in spawn, so they're not getting out in time, they're not killing AI, they have no control over the map, they're just in this little tiny cut-off portion of the map, stuck at the back, and they start stagnating. They start only having assault rifles and pistols pretty much all the time because they're not getting enough rec points, they're not getting enough kills. And it basically meant that it was just this really, really swingy game type where you had to come out of the gates flying, you had to pretty much push to the spawns. It really rewards playing the objective, it rewards killing the AI in the bases. For us, we didn't do as much of that as we would have done if we were at home, because we were trying this game, we had to queue for a really long time, and if we sat around killing bosses all day, we'd end up wasting our turns, so we ended up just trying to kill the people as much as we could and having as much fun as possible doing so. And overall, I was just really, really having fun with the game type, because it really rewarded aggression, like I said. If you fell asleep at the wheel at the beginning of the game, that was a really, really bad idea. You had to come out the gates, you had to push. If you started trying to camp at the back of the map, you were in for a bad time. Also, as well as the loadout tab and the power weapons tab, the third tab of requisition is the vehicles tab, in which you could get a Banshee, a Warthog, and that new Promethean flying vehicle, which I've forgotten the name of. I got in the Promethean flying vehicle once. It felt like you had to really lead your shots, but if you did with that primary weapon, it had like a primary weapon and like a bomb function. The bomb function, your shots, you had to be super accurate, and you could kind of let it slip away from you at times. But it was a good vehicle. I didn't really dabble with the vehicles too much. Like, I would have liked to try something like the tank, or like a Falcon, or maybe a Gauss Warthog. So they didn't have any of my personal favorite vehicles, so I just didn't feel too tempted to try. Plus, we couldn't communicate. You know, one of my favorite things to do in a Warthog is drive around and like call out people for my turret guy to kill. It's super intense. I do that all the time with Ubernick. And I didn't really feel the energy there. I just kind of wanted to kill people. Tried the sniper rifle. The sniper rifle's seen some drastic changes, which is pretty darn exciting to the way that it controls. There's obviously a lot less flinch in the game. And the thruster pack itself felt severely nerfed. I would say almost half as much, if not a third, shaved off of the thruster pack range. That was one of the first things that I noticed about the Halo 5 beta and was kind of on the fringe of complaining about, because it just felt utterly obnoxious that you could thruster pack from the top of your base to top middle on midship, or truth if you want to call it. And yeah, that just seemed like it was breaking the map, it was breaking map flow, whereas they seem to have tuned it to a much better speed. And of course, you've got the walking distance being faster, the sprint speed being slower, and overall the movement just seems to make a lot more sense. You've still got that feeling of excitement when you rush down a player, when you make a good aggressive play with the thruster packs, and you know, use it to enhance your strafe and movement abilities. But it's not so much so that everyone's kind of feels like they're teleporting around the map and just bodying each other for free and getting out of situations. Obviously, I had a fairly limited experience with the new gameplay mechanics. This was Warzone, so it was probably a little bit more geared towards a casual experience. The people at the event were pretty darn terrible, and I say that in the nicest way possible, but I don't know if they had thumbs. I checked as hard as I could, and it did seem like they had them, but it might have been some artificial robot device. I'm not really sure. But the gameplay that they were, you know, expressing to me did not quite seem to reflect that. Nonetheless, a very enjoyable experience with Warzone. It definitely gave me a Ricochet vibe. If you remember Ricochet on Haven, for example, once you push the enemy back into their spawn, they could only spawn one of 3 places. And when they weren't so skilled, they would kind of just run up the lift on Haven and get themselves killed. Or they would run up the stairs and get themselves killed. And it had a similar vibe to this in Warzone. It was very pub stompy, very momentum based. So if you're not into that style of gameplay, I would probably stick away from Warzone. I don't think you're going to be wanting to look for full teams and have a competitive scrim. But if you want to run around in a vehicle, if you want to get a streak going as hard as possible. And it's not a streak like Halo 4. Like I said, when you get them handed for free, it's whoever does the best out of the gate, whoever's playing the objective the best, whoever's pushing into the enemy spawn the best, and it 100% awards aggression. If you're sat at the back sniping people, you won't be capturing the points, you won't be getting the points on the AI, you will be only benefiting yourself on the scoreboard, and it will damage you as a result, because you could end up getting spawn trapped if your team don't do the objective work for you, don't do the leg work for you. Nonetheless, I've been Modest Major. Hope you guys enjoyed this commentary on Warzone. I know it was a bit of a long one, but I really wanted to get across my feelings of the game type, and I can do a follow-up video on this, talking more about Halo 5 and more about the weapons and gameplay mechanics a little bit, if that helps. Anyway, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching. I've been Modest Major. Peace out.